My name is Taylor Irwin. I work with the Central Michigan District Health Department here in Mount Pleasant, and we have a presentation for you. I also have my supervisor and my coworker, Tracy and Doug, over here in the corner as well to help answer questions at the end if we need. But basically, we're going to talk about the health department perspective and tank pumping, locating septic tanks, observations and documentation, and at the end, if you're willing to share stories, discussions, things you've encountered on the site, we would love to hear from you as well. So to begin, I'm going to go over the health department perspective. So we typically look at septic tanks during a time of transfer program, which we have here in Isabella County. Some of you may or may not have that in your county, but that would be one time we encounter it. Existing system evaluations that we would conduct around the time when people do additions to their homes or something like that. They may have their tank pumped and inspected. Replacement sewage system final inspections. We may take a look at the condition of the tank at the time that they install a new drain field, just to make sure that the tank condition is appropriate. And then if we get complaints, and most people, if they have, their tank failing or raw sewage coming up or backing up, will get that fixed before there's a complaint. But occasionally we do have ones that, the neighbor has to call that they've got raw sewage in the yard before we hear about it. The time of transfer program that I mentioned in Isabella County, just to give you some information, this one goes from 2018 to 2021. So we have approximately 25 a year that fail at the time of existing system evaluations, time of transfer evaluations, which in our county require the tank to be pumped at that time. So typically those ones, the homeowner wasn't aware that there was anything wrong with their tank, but they go to get it pumped and it's cracked or severely undersized or something like that. Cumulatively, this is important to the area to have tanks maintained appropriately. It can end up having a pretty big impact on the community. This information here isn't just septic tanks, this is sewage systems overall, but it can really be important for environmental and public health reasons. Just to specify a little bit, the importance of the septic system and septic tank maintenance are to better manage the on-site sewage systems, make sure they're working efficiently and effectively at people's homes, to reduce pollution to surface waters and groundwaters, reduce public health risks, especially if we've got cracked tanks and the potential for collapse, and to promote healthy communities and the environment. So I think probably a shared goal that a lot of us have is to get homeowners that have on-site systems to really care about and make a priority of maintaining these systems, and educating them as well on point source pollution impacts. So some of those systems that only have a septic tank that's connected to a field tile, and the impact that those can have to the community and to their environment. And leading on prevention and long-term maintenance. I think a lot of the pumpers have the opportunity to really take the lead on and educate homeowners about proper septic tank maintenance. When you're out there doing your tanks, you have a really good opportunity to educate them and make sure they're properly maintaining. This second part about locating septic tanks hopefully will be helpful maybe for some of our new pumpers. There's a few different ways to locate septic tanks when you get a call. You can pull records from us at the health department, look for the sewer lines in the buildings where those go out and can often point you in the right direction of locating the tank. If there's risers, obviously that's an easy one. And then looking for depression or areas on the ground to locate those as well. So again, here's a quick picture of risers that you may find. Those ones would be easy. Looking for signs like dead grass over the septic tanks, especially if they're real close to the surface, that's pretty common. And depressions in the lawn as well. Sometimes after they install the tank, the soil around the tank sinks down a little bit, and you'll see things like that as well. So when you're going out to a site for the first time and don't have any information, those can be indicators. A couple points on safety. It's really important not to stand over the tank when you're digging it up. Sometimes the dirt that's there is the only thing holding it together, so you really don't want to fall in if the tank structure is compromised. And then another thing is that cracking the lids during pumping or during inspection is pretty common, especially those concrete lids. And take care when removing and installing those lids. And then you can see, like in this picture, how there's a small crack in the tank. You know, it may be tempting to just put that back on the tank, but we really want those tanks to be watertight and not be getting any excess or surface water into the septic system so that it doesn't prematurely fail the septic system from having too much water. And then observation and documentation when you're out in the field pumping these tanks. This is an example of a pump card here. They're becoming a lot more common. Potentially, if we end up with a statewide sanitary code, they could be included in that. Some of the counties are using those in their time of transfer program as well. Just out of curiosity, how many pumpers in the room have to fill these out in their counties? Okay, just a couple. And how many people are doing this informally, you know, doing a thorough inspection of the tanks when they're out there and having those conversations with the homeowners? Okay, so something a lot of you are already doing. Some of the things I wanted to point out that are on this list are the water level in the tank, if they have indication that the water level's been too high or overflowed. Having a scum layer on the top to indicate good and proper bacteria in the tank. Effluent filters, I think that's a great opportunity for education with the homeowners as well. Not that it's just this, you know, one more thing they have to clean or maintain when it plugs up, but really having that conversation about this is an important part of your system because those solids that get caught in that filter are not making it out to your field. And if, you know, you take the filter out of there, those solids are going out to your field, and that can lead to premature failure as well. And the lids, like I mentioned earlier, if there's, you know, cracks in the lids and you want to have them put a new lid on there so surface water doesn't get in, that's another opportunity for education. And I have some pictures here about things that we've seen in the field or in the inspection reports that we get during our time of transfer program. Some of these things that we see in terms of documentation are black and white pictures versus colored pictures. We like to see colored pictures so you can see if the stone is blackened and you can see more clearly and accurately what's represented on the site. This picture here can be a good example of why it's important to really take a good close look at the tank. On this picture on the left here for you guys, you can see if you look closely, there is a crack in that tank that goes all the way through the top of the lid. But because it's covered and filled in with dirt, and if there was, you know, the dirt wasn't fully cleared off the top, that's not something you would probably see unless you were looking closely. Here's some pictures of what we like to see in our inspection reports and from out in the field are those good clear lines on the tank. And another thing with the pump cards for anybody who does do pumps for time of transfer inspections, what we always tell our inspectors as well is that they're just there to make observations when they're doing them for the time of transfer, and it's the health department that determines the pass or fail. So some people find it that they want to have those communications with the homeowner. Oh, everything's fine, everything looks good. But specifically for the time of transfer programs, we really just need the observations, and then it falls on the health department to make that determination. So as I mentioned at the end, I saved some time for questions and discussions. We'd love to hear your stories, challenging sites, close calls, failed tanks, conversations you've had with the homeowners, things like that. So I will open the floor for questions, discussions, and stories. Yeah.
In Isabella County, do you do a drain field test when you do an inspection?
For the time of transfers
Yes.
and the existing system evaluations, we do inspect the drain field as well.
But do you do a test of the drain field? In our little business, we test the drain field because sometimes it looks like it's working. Even the scum line might look right, but we figure we put like 150 gallons in the system of water, and we measure the depth and see if it raises up in the inlet or outlet. It might raise a little bit because the delivery pipe might be uphill a little bit, but if it maintains that level that's acceptable. It's not foolproof, but it really helps a lot. If the place has been abandoned or like a camp and they haven't lived in there for a long time, we put more water in the system. And just to do a test, it helps out a lot.
Gotcha. We do not currently do anything like that for our systems. We just look at the level in the tank that's there currently, and we look for signs of failure in the drain field. In the vacant homes in our program specifically for time of transfer, that's basically something we would just put notes on the report that, that failure is very hard to identify in a vacant system, but this is what we found. So.
Holes do you dig to check the pipe?
I think the question is how many holes do we dig in the drain field for like a point of sale or an existing system evaluation? Technically, one is required, but we usually like to see at least two, like different ends of the drain field.
So you don't mind if you dig into a existing drain field and disturb the layers that it's been built as?
We don't actually dig into, you typically auger a hole to the top of the stone. We're not actually going through the stone in the drain field itself, but we're looking for standing water at the top of the stone or blackened stone to determine failure.
You're sealing it back up again then before you put the dirt in, your straw or paper or something, or you just put the dirt back in again?
Usually the dirt just goes back in because there's not anything on top of it usually the systems are old enough that there's not anything on top of it currently.
Yep. Yeah, no, it would have been long gone by then.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's like the 2-inch hand auger. It's not like
Okay.
we're uncovering a substantial portion
Right,
of
you're
the
not
drain
using
field.
Right, you're just using the perk test. Mm-hmm. Okay, all right.
Yeah, similar, yeah.
Hey, hold on. Just wait, guys. It's being recorded. It's very helpful if we can hear you.
So with going down just to the stone, if you have an older system that's clay and you've got calcification and lime and all that between each clay tile, stone is crystal clear. It's perfectly white. It's compacted, but the tile are still holding water. You can't even see that without doing a water test. There's no way that you can determine that and find out that the system is a 20 by 30 with a 4-bedroom home because they put additions on it. So it's not adequate for the 4-bedroom home that's being built. Because you're looking at the top of the stone, the biomass going to start at the bottom. It doesn't start at the top. And you won't have any water standing because the tile are totally sealed at each joint. I physically dug up 3/4 of a field by hand to show the sanitarians that there was no water leaching one bit out of any one of them till you take a pocket knife and you get a 12-inch geyser coming out of each joint as you're going along, but you couldn't tell anything by the stone. Am I wrong? And so what is the health department in your area considering output for each bedroom of a home? of
What-
water. So when you design a system for each bedroom, what is the design calibration? 150 gallons for the first bedroom, 100 gallons for each bedroom afterwards. So up to a 4-bedroom home, that's designed to take 450 gallons of water per day.
Yeah.
So if you go out there with 100 gallons of water, 1.67 feet of 4-inch pipe is a gallon of water. So with 1 gallon of water, you're not even testing the system to see if it's adequate for a 4-bedroom home. But if you go out there for 450 gallons, Grandma lived there for the last 20 years. She has a biomat that's made about 12 foot out from the end of the tank at the header pipe because her water never exceeded that amount of water because she lived there for so long by herself. So you can add water to the system, put 100 in, it'll show a failure. But if you wait a few minutes, or if you hand snake it and can loosen up some of that biomat, boom, that field will be back open and back running. But that biomat contained it to a certain small area because she was there for 20 years.
Yeah. I think I'm following and gathering what your question is here.
And that's why we need some kind of a state standard to figure something out. Because I go out after somebody, this house is sold 3 times, and you go along on top of the field, and you can see where everybody's augured and went through this stuff, broke that up so the fiber wasn't on the top of the stone to keep the topsoil from going through, especially if it's in a low area. And the water pool's on top of it, it will go through every one of them ports that them people augured in the past. And you will see it plain as day. Does anybody use on their, and I'm not smart with the phone, sorry, but use satellite and look down at when you go to layers to locate a tank, and sometimes it'll show up in the summertime with the satellite image to see where a tank's at? Try that. That really works.
Yeah, sometimes you can see that on the GIS imagery. And I think just to kind of give you some more information on your question, the way that our time of transfer program was passed was basically to determine things that are an immediate public health risk. And those are, we have a list of criteria that those are meet required actions to determine if it fails. So it's not that we're just assessing the system in general for the condition. For example, the size of the tank in the field have to meet a minimum of 50% of what we require. So as long as like size-wise, those capacities meet 50%, they would pass. But we would write notes on there stating, that the system is undersized, but it meets 50%. So it's not about making sure you have a brand new system that's completely up to code. It's more to identify things that are an immediate public health hazard and get those fixed.
I like this discussion because we use cameras when we do our inspection. We don't generally dig up any area of the drain field. We just run cameras out through the header, try and get at least 2 directions. And one thing sometimes that we find is that you might have a biomat in the first section and then it cleans up for the rest of the field. Or maybe you'll get some biomat in the bottom end. So we can kind of tell you, there's 30% buildup of some biomat. It's showing signs of life or use, but it's still a functioning system. So the discussion, and keep it civil here, guys. We're not trying to shoot anyone down. We're all learning from each other. We all want to know what each other does, and we're all better for it. So let's build each other up.
But I just got the question of that on the point of sales, what I've run into and having to go behind, because the point of sale was a pass. Then the people move in, and I get the call 4 months later to come out there to assess the damage or see where we're at with this. And we just bought the house. Now they're looking at a several $1,000s repair, but it's already in their name. And that's where, and I have several of these that happen a month. And that's where I come in with, how do we fix there's a gap?
Yeah.
And looking for suggestions as to how do we handle that, or how do we stop this? Because you got somebody that just financed to the hilt to get into this place in 15, 18, or $35,000 for a mound is a big chunk of change. How do we go between them two?
Yeah, it is. And again, like in our program in Isabella County, that's why even when we do pass them in those types of situations, it was undersized. The laundry wasn't previously tied in. Now the laundry's tied in. And, it was just grandma that was there. And now it's a family of 4. Unfortunately, those situations, we do run into those as well. And we get those calls too that, this just passed. Why is it failing now? And that's why we put as much information about the report and the system that we can see from the files and everything on the notes as much as we can. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't see those notes, I don't think. They just see the authorization. So we do try and have conversations with the realtors as well to make sure that the buyer is actually seeing those authorization forms with notes. But like I said, in Isabella County specifically, that we have specific criteria that we have to follow for failure. So if we were to include other things, that's something that would have to be updated in the code. But it is something as well, for those time of transfers, you can refer back to those authorizations and, hopefully they at least have those notes on there. But there's not a lot we can do about it. I don't think. It's just unfortunate. But if anybody else has suggestions or how they have those conversations, please share that as well.
So my wife is a realtor broker, and this is something I almost hear daily from her coming out of her office, is we have these home inspectors. They inspect electrical, roofs, and they go out and inspect the septic systems. They're not even really, they're getting their license out of the cracker box, because we're all professionals here. We know what to look for. I've been out with my wife on these appointments, and I actually dig the fields up after these people leave and make sure that they're on her ones that she's selling. But how do we get that regulated where it's in our state, where these people are going out and doing their job properly?
So in Isabella County specifically, we certify our private inspectors for doing these reports. So for us to receive a report, it has to be by somebody that we've certified so that they know what they're looking at. I don't know what all the other counties that have worked in time of transfer do, but that's what we have here in Isabella County. We actually just had a certification meeting last week. So that's how we handle those things.
Are there currently any cost share programs or match funding throughout the state to help replace failing septic systems?
In Isabella County, we currently do have one. I believe there's very limited funding left. Our program is run through the Conservation District. We're hoping to obtain additional funding to continue the program. And the cost share program, we worked with the Conservation District to help get that going. It was a 75% cost share, so the homeowner has to come up with 25%. And that has gone very well. We just did basically a year pilot program. The tribe applied for EPA 319 funding that funded part of that. And then the Conservation District applied for 2% grants that the tribe offers to Isabella and Aranet counties each year, and they funded the other half of the project. So we ended up having about $200,000, and it's lasted us about a year, and we did not do any marketing for the program. We just, handed out flyers as people specifically asked for cost share, if there was any financial assistance. But we didn't market it, and $200,000 lasted us about a year. I know It sounds like the state is in process of getting some low interest loan funding available. As far as I know, that hasn't been determined how that's going to be distributed, but that should be an option coming shortly from what I understand. And then I believe rural development at the federal level also has some loans as well. I don't know the specifics, but I believe that is an option for financing.
I think we should continue to have the discussion on the inspection issue. I would like to see, I'm going to talk to realtors and within the organization here, Michigan Septic Tank Association, I want to, keep having that discussion with legislators and stuff. I'm a member in Indiana too, since we're so close, and they're opening up their Rule 410. It's similar to our Part 117, where they're actually requiring point of sale inspections, and then there's guidelines to how you inspect, which is very similar to, it's like a combination of like counties I hear that are doing it. LaPorte County kind of started the program, and then there's a way to become licensed as the pumpers, and then if other people want to join the inspection business, you have to test and pass and then follow the same guidelines in reporting. So I think it makes the inspections better, and it levels the playing field, and it makes everything better. So the more we can all keep talking about it, I know we hear having a statewide code and stuff, and I don't even know what that looks like, but I think for me, being part of this organization, my first goal is to see some type of inspection standard, at least, and kind of clean up the inspection mess a little bit and make it all better statewide. So anyway, that's something that's kind of on my radar.
Well, you talk about how you guys have inspectors, you certify them. Can you tell us about that? Can you tell us how you got your health department to come together to have like a list of certified inspectors and what that looks like? Because that's something that we could, bring to ours potentially.
So in Isabella County, our time of transfer program started in 2018, and that was just a part of the process that we got approved initially, that we would certify private inspectors as well. We started also in 2018 doing the inspection so they could have the health department or a certified private inspector complete the report or complete the inspection. The health department is the only one that issues the report for authorization. But those inspectors can be used as well, and then we review the reports. And then during COVID, we were really limited in the things that we could do for inspections. And during that time, leaned pretty heavily, got most of our reports in from the private inspectors. And that's, kind of worked out well for us with the certification program and having them available. And at this time, most of our time of transfer reports come from certified private inspectors. So.
Did you have any resistance to implementing the program, like from other groups or
Yeah, I can give you a little bit more background on the time of transfer. I previously worked for the tribe as well. They kind of kicked off this discussion a little bit. They did some source tracking in some of the local tributaries with E. coli and found that a majority of it was human. So that's kind of how this discussion got started of, realization that the septics were really contributing and that something needed to be done about it. So that was 2018 then when Isabella County approved the time of transfer program. I think at the time there was, some resistance from some of the realtors, but a lot of them kind of took it on and championed it as like a buyer protection program. So based on the evidence that the tribe provided with the source tracking, And we also had, there was also support from the realtor side as well. And basically an agreement was made on the types of criteria that would pass or fail and how those go through, including that certified inspectors program by the health department.
So I think on a local level, what we should do is we should be talking to our local health departments and saying, hey, would you consider implementing some type of a standard of inspection, just so everybody's inspecting to the same level? So I think start there. Number two, I don't think we'll win this with our budget and the Realtors Association budget. Legislatively, they've got the money to knock any idea out. So the idea is you have to become the Realtor Association's friend, right? So get your local realtors to talk about point of sale stuff and the benefits, but then have them talk to the association, because the association's who has the money, and they're the ones that are going to get behind it legislatively. And I think that's the success that Indiana is having right now. The Builders Association, the Realtors Association, and IOPA are all like, we're all professionals here, and they're actually coming to the septic side, and they're saying, hey, here, there's a bill coming up. What do you think of it? Which way should we vote? And they get their heads together, and that's what we got to do. Keep our heads together, become friends with your local health department. Don't look at them as adversaries. We need them. This is all public health related stuff. Put your personal, whatever, opinions of people aside. There's probably people that don't like you, so, they're gracious with you. So let's be gracious with everybody for a common good, and that is public health, right? We don't want sewage running into our wells. We don't want sewage in our yards. I don't want that for anybody in Michigan. So if we can do better at inspections, if we can have more inspections, if we can get the standard of inspections up, there's money there. There's also money generated to the state in licensing people to do inspections. So anyway.
Yeah, lots of collaboration.
Yeah.